Ava placed a cup of soup in front of me. "There's only enough for my family." I couldn't understand what she was talking about. "Should we head back?" Ken asked, then started towards the entrance. "Yes," I replied, standing up to follow him. "I'm sorry for how things turned out." I apologized and started talking to him like a dam had burst. About how suddenly Ava had completely changed her attitude towards me from a certain time. "My name is Hannah McKinley. I'm a 56-year-old housewife. My husband's name is Ken. Ken and I used to work at the same company. It was a classic office romance. I was in accounting, and Ken was in sales. Our departments were different, but he would often come by the accounting office. Ken would distribute souvenirs from his trips to our department. He was thoughtful and kind. Whenever I visited the sales department for receipt verification, Ken was always the first to assist me. Even when he wasn't at fault, Ken would always apologize. He was sincere and had a gentle smile. I was secretly attracted to him, but too shy to make the first move, so we remained colleagues for a while. Then, one day, it was discovered that an employee was mishandling receipts. Ken cooperated with the accounting department, helping us get to the bottom of it. After resolving the issue, he invited me to dinner. I thought it would be a group outing, but it turned out to be just the two of us. I was surprised, but more so, delighted. Dinner with Ken was so enjoyable that I lost track of time. We shared a love for things like balancing the books perfectly, and our hobbies and thought processes were similar. After that, we went out to eat several times and started dating. About 6 months into our relationship, Ken proposed to me. I pretended to think it over, but I was extremely happy. I tried to keep him in suspense for about a week, but my happiness got the better of me, and I immediately said yes. Ken has always been incredibly kind, from the moment we met. And that hasn't changed even after we got married. He always thinks about me. And he makes sure we spend quality time together. I consider myself truly fortunate to be married to him. I continued working after our marriage, but retired when I became pregnant with our first child, Jack. Jack's birth was difficult. He was breech. Ken told me the doctors had said it might endanger one or both of our lives. Despite the challenges, we doted on Jack when he was born. Jack was a mischievous child, covering our house in doodles and dismantling his toys. Yet, we never scolded him, letting him grow up freely. Because of the risks associated with my pregnancy and childbirth, Ken and I decided Jack would be our only child. That is why he was our precious treasure. During his kindergarten and early elementary years, he was quite unruly, often causing his teachers a lot of trouble. They warned us about it numerous times. However, as he moved into the upper grades of elementary school, he began to show more discretion and behaved more appropriately. Jack turned into quite the exemplary student. He excelled academically, served as the student leader. He was also appointed as captain of his club activities. He never scored below distinction. But at home, Jack didn't seem to study much. Whenever I peeked into his room, he was usually lying down, reading comics. When I asked if he was studying, he'd simply reply "I am," without looking up from his comics. Yet, his grades never dropped. He must have been working hard in ways I didn't see. Jack chose to attend a public middle and high school. Even though Jack's grades were good enough for the more challenging private schools, he chose the public school closest to home. Throughout middle and high school, Jack was always among the top students and even served as the student leader. For college, he stayed local, attending a public university in the area. In college, Jack seemed more focused on activities like volunteering than on his studies. When it came time for job hunting, Jack only applied to local companies. Given Jack's grades, he should have been able to land a job at a large corporation or a multinational company. I found it curious that he chose to work for a smaller company instead. I asked him why. Ever since high school, I just kinda wanted to work locally. It turns out, a high school project about our hometown had sparked his interest. In college, he chose to deepen his understanding of our town through volunteering. I hadn't realized Jack was thinking this way, and I was genuinely impressed. "You're amazing, thinking everything through like that," I praised him. "It's no big deal," he said, blushing with a shy smile. Jack got a job at a local company he wanted and graduated from university without a hitch. I thought he would commute from our house, but he decided to rent an apartment closer to work. "It's all about experience," he said. He wanted to understand how challenging household chores can be. With Jack gone, our house became eerily quiet. Just like it was when we first got married. Ken and I decided to enjoy our life together again. Thanks to Jack choosing public schools, we had quite a bit of savings left. Our mortgage was almost paid off, and it looked like we'd be able to pay it off completely when Ken retires. Furthermore, my family owns several apartment buildings. Eventually, I'm supposed to take over managing them. Our retirement seemed secure without any financial worries. Jack's apartment was close enough to visit by bike, so he often came home. This kept us from feeling too lonely. After several years of this peaceful life, Jack said he had someone he wanted us to meet. It was when he was at 26. He brought a woman home. Let me introduce you. This is Ava. Ava worked in the accounting department at the same company as Jack. When Ken and I heard this, we exchanged glances and laughed. Jack and Ava looked at us, puzzled. Ken, still chuckling, began to tell the story of how we met. Listening to our story, Jack and Ava smiled at each other. Ava was petite, with eyes that crinkled when she smiled, giving her a kind and adorable impression. She seemed a bit nervous, looking around our house curiously. It was like a little bird surveying its surroundings. It was charming. Ken and I immediately took a liking to her. If only we had been more scrutinizing at that time, the incident that followed might not have happened. There was a reason Ava was looking around our house. But we failed to notice it. Nice to meet you, she said with a pleasant voice that made me think Jack was lucky to have her. Ava was a great listener, and even Ken, who's usually quiet, chatted with her happily. We had a delightful dinner together. After Jack and Ava left, Ken and I felt relieved and happy that Jack had chosen such a wonderful partner. Somehow, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Jack and Ava's relationship progressed smoothly, and they decided to get married. They had their wedding at a local venue, and everyone was blessing them. Ken and I were overjoyed, and that day became one of the most memorable in our lives. However, I couldn't have imagined that from this point on, Ken and I would start facing a series of misfortunes. At first, I thought maybe it was a coincidence, or perhaps Ava was just not feeling well, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Her attitude towards me worsened day by day. Even when I tried to consult Ava about what to make for dinner, she would initially pretend not to hear me. The most common response I got was a bothersome sounding "what is it?" I felt intimidated by Ava's attitude. I was just thinking about what to make for dinner tonight. Her replies were always cold. Oh, anything is fine. You decide, Hannah. There was no room for discussion. Her attitude had clearly changed from when we first met. And it was only towards me. More than angry, I was perplexed. I didn't want to ruin our relationship, so I ended up being overly accommodating. So, how about stew for tonight? Ava would dismissively agree and cut the conversation short. I immediately started preparing the stew. Then, without offering any help, Ava would mutter to herself in her usual way, making snide remarks like, "That ingredient? What about the herbs?" as if picking on every little thing. I ignored her comments and continued cooking in silence. While cooking, I wondered if I had done something terrible to Ava. But nothing came to mind. Did I say something unpleasant to her? Did I offend her somehow? I tried desperately to remember. But nothing seemed to fit. Honestly, I couldn't think of any reason for her behavior. Ava's attitude didn't improve over time. Every time she treated me badly, I wondered what I might have done to her. But I couldn't understand why Ava was behaving this way. It felt like the reason for her change in attitude had nothing to do with me. This was just a hunch, not a conviction. A year passed, and Ava's behavior towards me remained unchanged. In fact, it got worse. Hannah, this dish looks so bad. Ava began to openly criticize my cooking. No longer indirectly, she was now blatantly insulting. The seasoning looks too strong, and doesn't it look unappealing? I couldn't help but respond. We always have this at home. Ava would laugh off my words with a snort. Is that so? How tacky. I was honestly quite irritated by Ava's attitude. If you're going to complain that much, why don't you cook by yourself next time? You are such a scary, Hannah. Ava would exaggerate her fear in a loud voice. Probably so that Ken and Jack in the living room could hear. This calculating side of Ava scared me. Anyway, Ava's behavior was only evident when it was just the two of us. She kept provoking me with her comments. I thought about discussing this with Ken or Jack many times. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Ava was exceptionally devoted to Ken. And she got along well with Jack. That's why I thought I just had to endure it. I didn't want to ruin our relationship. Tonight's dinner is a simmered fish dish, made by Hannah. Ava served the meal with an incredible smile. After enduring her snide comments in the kitchen, all I could manage was a forced smile. Ken sat down, saying, "It looks delicious." Jack was smiling too. "Hannah can cook delicious meals, and she's great at laundry and cleaning. I really admire her," Ava said, turning towards me with a smile. Honestly, it made me uncomfortable. "You're truly amazing, Hannah." Ken and Jack, unaware of Ava's hidden face, looked at her endearingly as she praised me. "Thank you," I replied, trying to maintain a smile. Anyone unfamiliar with the situation would notice how unnatural my expression was. Seeing Ava's smile, no one would believe she treated me terribly. I feared that I would be the one accused of lying. I was afraid of being called a liar by Ken and Jack. I thought if I didn't tell anyone and just kept enduring, maybe Ava's attitude would change. But her harsh words and behavior towards me never improved. Ava constantly complained about my cooking. But she never contributed herself, not even in cleaning up. And she was quick to complain about even the smallest dissatisfaction. One day, Ava hurled unbearable words at me. "Hannah, are you serious with that seasoning?" I couldn't hold back and retorted. "Got a problem with it?" Ava, as usual, feigned exaggerated surprise. "No, not at all." "What's with that tone? Stop mocking me already." Ava seemed slightly taken aback by my earnest gaze. She muttered, "I'm not mocking," while biting her lip and glaring at me. "I'm really tired of this constant unpleasantness," I continued. "Shut up. A woman like you." It was as if Ava's true colors were revealed. Her face contorted in ugliness. "You deserve to be treated roughly." Ava continued to berate me. She didn't hold back, calling me truly tacky, ugly, and unthinkable as a mother-in-law. It was clear she really disliked me. But I couldn't understand how someone could say such awful things, even to someone they disliked. If she hated me that much, she could just keep her distance. I was deeply saddened. "It's sad to know you think like this." Ava suddenly raised her voice in a frenzy. "I really can't stand it anymore." "Hey, are you all right?" Jack called from the living room. He seemed to hear Ava's loud voice. "I heard loud voices coming from here." Jack came into the kitchen. Seeing me and Ava arguing, Jack approached from the living room. Ava, seeing Jack, seemed to regain her composure. "Sorry, it was just a cockroach." I went along with Ava's excuse. "Yeah, sorry for the noise." Ava assured Jack, "We took care of the cockroach. It's all fine now," and pushed him back towards the living room. Jack went back, saying, "Oh, okay." Neither Ava nor I wanted to involve Ken and Jack. This was a problem between me and Ava. Our relationship didn't change after that. The tension between us continued to hang in the air. But about 6 months later, a piece of happy news arrived at Jack's house. Ava was pregnant. I hoped this would be a chance to change our relationship. During her pregnancy, Ava reduced her visits to our house to take care of herself. It gave me some peace. I kept pondering why Ava had changed her attitude towards me. I couldn't think of anything specific. There was just one thing that bothered me, but could that really be the reason for her behavior? No, that can't be it, I thought, shaking my head as I headed out for shopping. When Ava entered a stable phase of her pregnancy, she and Jack came over. I had hoped that Ava's attitude would have softened now that she was having a child. But that thought was too optimistic. Whenever Ava met me, she reverted to her previous awful behavior. "Everything is progressing smoothly with the pregnancy, unlike you." I told Ava, "You should rest on the sofa, considering your condition," but Ava hurled harsh words at me. "No way. If I leave the cooking to you, who knows what you'll make?" Ava even said something unbelievable, "I need to supervise you." Supervise? Is that how she sees me? If you want to argue back, go ahead. But I don't care what a woman who only had one child like you says. I responded calmly, "Oh, is that so?" But inside, I was far from peaceful. I always felt guilty for not being able to give Jack siblings. Somewhere in my heart, I felt sorry towards Jack. But that also meant I could give Jack all my love and had more time to be there for him. Ken and I were able to lead a leisurely life together. I had no regrets about that. Seeing me silent, Ava piled on more complaints. That reaction, can't talk back, huh? How tacky. I couldn't understand what Ava wanted or why she was doing this. I thought it was pointless to engage with her anymore, so I ignored her. A few months later, Ava and Jack had a healthy baby girl. She was our first grandchild. I was incredibly happy. We eagerly awaited the day we could meet our granddaughter. I hoped the baby's arrival would improve my relationship with Ava. I had experience raising a child, so I thought I could teach Ava a lot. But my hopes didn't come true. This became evident during a party. The truth behind Ava's treatment of me would also be revealed. A week after Ava and the baby were discharged from the hospital, Ken and I rushed to Jack's apartment with gifts for the newborn. Ken and I brought a plethora of presents for our granddaughter, a swaddle, a baby carrier, diapers, formula, and more. Ava looked a bit worn out but seemed fine. Her cold gaze when she saw me was concerning, but I was too excited to see my granddaughter to care. The baby was sound asleep in her crib. Seeing Jack as a father was deeply moving. He looked more mature, more like an adult. I began setting out the groceries I had bought. I brought plenty of ready-made meals, thinking Ava and Jack wouldn't have had time to cook. When I started to prepare in the kitchen, Ava oddly insisted, "I'll do it, please sit down." When I said, "You don't have to push yourself," Ava firmly pushed me into a chair. "I'm saying I'll do it." I sat down, feeling uneasy about Ava's unusual behavior. Ava plated the ready-made food and served it to Ken and Jack. "Please, go ahead and eat." I thought she'd serve mine next, but Ava placed just one plate. Not at my seat, but at her own seat. A bad feeling crept over me, but I stayed silent. "Oh no, I forgot Hannah's portion." Ken and Jack were laughing. It seemed I was the only one with a bad feeling. However, Ava's next action left Ken and Jack frozen in shock. She placed a cup of soup in front of me. "There's only enough for my family." I couldn't comprehend what she meant. As I stood there, stunned, Ava added with a laugh. "You're not family. You're an outsider. Isn't that obvious?" I couldn't grasp what she meant by not family. It became clear that Ava's feelings towards me hadn't changed from before. At that moment, Ken stood up. "Shall we leave?" That's all he said before heading towards the entrance. "Yes," I replied, standing up to follow him. In the lobby of the apartment building, I apologized to Ken. "I'm sorry it turned out like this." Ken smiled kindly at me. "It's not your fault. It's Ava's." "What happened?" I told Ken everything, like a dam had burst. How Ava suddenly changed her attitude towards me. And how she pretended to be friendly in front of Ken and Jack. Ken looked into my eyes and nodded slowly. I asked why he believed me so readily. "Well, I never imagined Ava would do such a thing." I thought the same would be true if I were in Ken's position. Ava had been that convincing. "You wouldn't lie, especially not to put someone else down." Ken trusted me. That made me very happy. Ken murmured to himself. "As her husband, it's unthinkable not to believe Hannah." Tears started to well up in my eyes. Ken handed me a handkerchief with a smile. "It's my fault too, for not realizing this sooner." I couldn't blame him. I had kept it all hidden. "I'm really sorry." His words made me cry even more. "Don't worry about anything. I'm here for you." I said thank you through my tears. Ken's dependability and kindness moved me deeply. Just as we were about to leave the lobby, my phone rang. It was a call from Jack. Feeling guilty for ruining the celebration of our first grandchild, I answered the phone. Jack wanted us to come back for a proper discussion. He wanted to apologize for Ava's behavior and mentioned that she had been acting strangely. After consulting with Ken, we decided to go back. When we opened the front door, Jack was there to greet us. Instead of taking us to the living room, he led us to the nursery, which was being prepared for the baby. It was already set up with a study desk and bed. I chuckled at how eagerly they were preparing. "I'm really sorry about Ava. You've been having trouble for a while, haven't you?" Jack seemed to have noticed something. That time in the kitchen when she raised her voice, you two were arguing, right? Right, I had lied to Jack about a cockroach then. Had he realized? I explained to Jack that Ava's attitude had changed shortly after their marriage. Jack listened silently, his fists clenched. I'm really sorry. Jack believed me. I had thought he might defend Ava and call my story a lie. Tears welled up in my eyes again. I've decided to divorce Ava. Ken and I were so shocked we couldn't find the words to speak. Why? I managed to utter just that one word. Ken nodded in agreement. Jack said, I'll explain, just come with me to the living room, and left the room. Ken and I followed. From the living room, we could hear Ava's crying and her yelling no. On the dining table, there was a divorce paper. I didn't miss it was with Jack's signature. When Ava saw me, she threw a magazine and other small items on the table at me. One nearly hit me. But Ken shielded me, taking the hit on his face. His glasses flew off in the wrong direction. Perhaps Ava hadn't expected her throw to hit. She stood there, eyes wide open, frozen in place. I looked at Ken and saw blood trickling from his temple. Jack's face twisted in anger as he approached Ava and restrained her hands. Do you even realize what you've done? Jack's voice boomed like I had never heard before. Ava collapsed to the floor, as if her legs had given out. I'm not wrong, it's not my fault, it's that woman's fault. Ava repeated in a daze. Jack looked at me sadly. Right after we got married, Ava came to see you, remember? I tried to recall which time he meant. Then it hit me. The odd feeling from that visit. Right, Ava had come to see me alone. She had asked me for a loan. That was something Jack didn't know about. So, I told her, first talk to Jack about it. She agreed and went home quickly. Since she never came back to discuss it, I assumed it was resolved. I had kept this to myself. So, Ken was unaware. I'm sorry I kept quiet. I didn't want to upset Ava. Sucking up like that really ticks me off. Ava suddenly lashed out at me. She spoke so crudely. About that loan, Ava had taken out another loan to pay it back. Jack continued, revealing Ava's spending habits. She had always been extravagant with money. She preferred expensive food ingredients and loved brand-name goods. Even when Jack met her, Ava was in debt. He had talked to her about not taking any more loans. He said he couldn't be with her otherwise, and she had agreed. I remember Ava apologizing tearfully back then. Jack looked down at Ava with a sad expression. But I am absolutely not at fault. The bad one is her. Ava insisted, but her words held no conviction. Jack and Ken looked at her with cold eyes. Shut up! Ava started to wail, throwing a tantrum. We were at a loss and could only watch Ava from a distance, unable to intervene. Just as Ava was about to smash a ceramic ornament on the floor, the baby in the crib started crying. I rushed over to soothe her. We heard Ava's crying and her screaming. Shut up! Why is this brat crying? We were shocked and looked at Ava. Everyone's always in my way, just shut up! The baby cried even louder at Ava's yelling. I rushed to soothe the baby, but she wouldn't stop crying. Shut up! Make that brat stop crying! Was this the real Ava? She's still speaking so crudely. Her eyes showed she wasn't in her right mind. As if she had lost herself. Concerned for the baby's safety, I decided to take her to the nursery. Where are you taking her? I don't know what you might do to her. Ava was still shouting, demanding me to let go of the baby. Ava, first put down that ceramic piece in your hand. Ava looked at the ceramic she was about to smash. Is this what you want your baby to see? Ken said calmly, and Ava seemed to snap back to reality. She quietly put down the piece and covered her face with her hands. And she started to sob loudly. In the end, Ken and I decided to take care of the baby for the day. Let Jack and Ava talk things out. The next day, Jack came over. He looked worn but somehow relieved. In the living room, Jack shared a harrowing story with Ken and me. It was a terrifying revelation. It was about Ava's severe spending habits. Despite Jack's attempts, her spending didn't improve. But it got worse. She had repeatedly borrowed money from various sources, and it turned out she had her sights on our assets. When I heard this, I understood why Ava had been looking around our house the first time she came. She was checking if we had valuables or if we were wealthy. She tried to get money from me. But she harbored a grudge when I refused. That's when she started treating me harshly. I shuddered. It was not out of malice, but because I wanted them to discuss it as a couple first. Ava took it the wrong way. But Jack's story didn't end there. Recently, Jack noticed something off about Ava, so he hired a private investigator to look into it. The investigation revealed Ava's infidelity. But that's not all. Ava was conspiring with her lover to steal Ken's life insurance money after his death. I was shocked. Does that mean? Jack just nodded. They were planning to make it look like an accident. He continued, his voice heavy with pain. Ava had been tormenting me to drive me out of the house. Once I was gone, they planned to get rid of Ken. It was unimaginable. Ava had concocted such a horrific plan. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. Jack had decided to divorce Ava after receiving the report. He was waiting for the right moment to tell her when this incident happened. He said he was going to report it to the police. We can't just stay silent about this. Surely, if left unaddressed, Ava would repeat her actions. She would take silence as permission. And she'd likely do something even worse. Ava needed to face justice for her actions, Jack insisted. Ken agreed. I told Jack it's the right thing to do. Jack reported Ava to the police, and she was arrested. It was only right since she tried to unjustly claim the insurance money. Ava's diary detailed the plan to acquire the insurance money. Jack and Ava's divorce was finalized while she was in custody. If Ava were to be prosecuted, she and her accomplice would likely receive a prison sentence. Ava should reflect on her actions behind bars. She not only ruined Jack's life but also brought great trouble to their child. The assault on Ken didn't become a legal matter because he chose not to file a complaint. That was just like Ken, always so kind-hearted. With Ava gone, peace returned to my life. I sleep soundly at night, visit Jack's house without palpitations. And I'm enjoying a tranquil life with Ken. The time Ava wreaked havoc seems almost like a lie now. Jack and his daughter are living together. Fortunately, Ken and we live nearby. We help with daycare pickups, meals, and whatever we can. It's a joy to watch our granddaughter grow up so close. It looks like we'll be able to see her reach adulthood. She doesn't remember her mother since she was a baby. It might sound sad, but perhaps for the best given the kind of mother Ava was. And it seems Jack has a new girlfriend. My granddaughter whispered it to me as a secret. I'm looking forward to Jack saying, "I have someone I want you to meet."